I started fighting competitively when I was 12. I was a boxer and a kickboxer. And when I was fighting on the Army boxing team, it was tough going. I was the only white guy on the team for a long time. And when I first joined the team, they were constantly trying to kill me. They didn't like a white guy on the boxing team. I had to break 3 noses and 2 different ribs before they finally respected me. The 3 other noses, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
I got 3 broken noses as well. Yes, I had to earn my respect. But when I became the trainer and started doing all the massage work, and I was also in charge of nutrition, so I wrote all their training programs, I did their massage therapy, I did all their diets, and I managed the entire gym. And then anytime I got to go train for triathlon. But what happened to me was I had the realization that I was happy for the first time in my life because I was helping other people achieve their goals.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that if I was to turn pro, even if I was to win a world title and make a lot of money, I would ultimately not have the joy that I get from helping other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was 22 at that time, and that's when I realized what I was here to do. I made a commitment. It's making me emotional, I'm sorry, but I won the 82nd Airborne Division Championship, and I knocked the guy out really bad and unfortunately detached his retina, and it really hurt me inside that I hurt this guy. And I made a commitment after that I would devote my life to helping other people achieve their dreams and live the best life I could help them live. And that was my commitment to God, was to not use my athletic ability to hurt people, but to help them. And I had to hurt somebody else really bad to realize that I didn't want to hurt people anymore. It took me till I was 24 to finally hang up the gloves and say, okay, I don't need to. You know, my martial arts career began as out of fear that my father was going to hurt somebody, and I had to be ready to protect me against him, or my brothers and sisters, or my mother. And interestingly, when I had this realization, I went one day to all the fighters, because we would all get in a circle to start each of our practices on Olympic wrestling mats. And so I had all 30 of them there. And I said, I have a question for all of you guys that I want to ask, if you don't mind. I said, raise your hand if the reason you became a fighter was because you were afraid of your father and thought you one day might have to fight for your life and defend yourself against him. Guess how many hands went up?
I would imagine the majority.
28.
Wow.
28 of the 30 of the best amateur fighters in the world started their career out of fear that if they didn't learn to fight, their father was going to hurt them or someone in their family. And I realized then what I later came to understand through deep study of mythology, that there is built into every family what is called necessary abandonment. And that if our family upbringing was too perfect, we would never grow out of the child archetype and step into our authentic individuality. And that generally, the more mature the soul is, the tougher the beginnings it takes on, so that it can learn to have empathy and compassion for other people that are suffering through the same challenges.
Mm.
And so I realized that my very challenging beginnings was what I had to go through to understand the pain that people would come to me for the rest of my life, that would be manifesting as various types of illnesses, digestive disorders, heart problems, diseases, cancer, chronic pain that wouldn't go away. Because I had this root understanding, early in my career, I began doing a survey of each person's life history from birth to then, and mapping out all their traumas, and then looking for the correlations between the actual insult and their perception and their belief, and then mapping it out through the brain and the nervous system to see which parts of the body they were storing the psychic energy, then using maps like the Taoist maps and the Chinese emotional maps to correlate their anger, their grief, their resent, their sadness, their pain. And sure enough, I found the Taoists and the Chinese medicine people gave me the key to a lock, because once I knew what your pain was, I could work backwards through the system to get to the underlying emotions, and then I could inquire about the beliefs that were behind the judgments that were connected to the emotions that resulted from the trauma. And so I was able to actually start working with people to identify what their dream for their life was now and how to find ways to understand and make meaning out of how the traumatic experiences actually gave them the strength, the courage, or the capacity to have the empathy and compassion that they ultimately needed to fulfill that dream. And once people were able to connect those dots, it created a big shift in them. They went often from being in the victim archetype to stepping into their self-actuation and moving forward with their life. You know, I created the term the pain teacher, and I think our souls organize opportunities, events, situations that are meant to challenge us, but I've learned that the pain teacher shows up to direct your awareness to exactly where you need it to grow so that you can come face to face with your largely unconscious limitations. And that's, we're going to get into it, but that's, I think, doing real shadow work. There's a lot of fluffy shadow work out there, what I call new age stuff, but doing honest shadow work, which is not easy to do for most people, can avoid a lot of those visits from the pain teacher, because most of what draws painful experiences into our life is the beliefs, the judgments, the choices, and the actions that we're acting out, often not realizing that we're just recapitulating mom and dad or ancestral trauma and ancestral patterns such as addiction and violence and, all the stuff that you know about. But I found that one of the problems as a therapist that I've had to deal with, and it's a real problem, is that because we have this habit of putting people on drugs to numb them, and because alcohol is such a popular numbing drug, that people in our culture don't actually confront, work with, embrace, and learn from the pain. They keep wanting to cut it out or drug it out. And so what happens is the pain teacher has to keep coming back until you actually face the mirror. And instead of saying it's somebody else's fault, you have to embrace the fact that you're 50% of every relationship. And at some point, it's like, how many divorces or lost jobs or financial crisis do you go through before you actually face the mirror and say, okay, what's my part in all this? I can't just keep blaming it on other people. And until a person actually gets to the point where they're really ready to be honest with themselves and at least take responsibility for their 50% of every relationship, I think that you just keep running into your own shadow in the form of whatever it takes for the soul to get you to finally look inward. And it can take people a long time.
Yeah.
It can take people, some people never get there because they just keep drugging it out and just playing the victim and sabotaging themselves and prostituting themselves. And unfortunately, our whole culture's conditioned to not accept responsibility for their pain because there's, trillions of dollars being made on subverting that and covering it up with drugs and surgeries. And so, we're really in a cultural, we're in a cultural initiation because we're at the point now where, as Bobby Kennedy would be the first one to tell you, we can't go any further down this road because our children are so sick that our future is really can't exist in a pill bottle, or there is no future. We can't avoid what we're creating individually and collectively. The earth itself can't take it anymore. So we're in a real initiation.